Good morning, everybody. It is Manager Critic Monday or Motivation Monday, depending which way you want to look at it. It's the same thing from a different perspective. So good morning and a gorgeous welcome to anyone joining me live today. We're live at Step by Step Listening page in the Manager Critic community group and also on YouTube. So please leave your comments, say hello, and if you're watching on replay, please hashtag replay and always subscribe, like, comment and share the love, because you know that Big Brothers will only encourage other people to hear this news if you share the love and let people know that what you're watching is of value. So today we're talking about struggling with change. One of the three things that I notice that people have when change is happening is that they'll either get into an overwhelm because there's been lots of change, or maybe a really big change, and usually it's to do with if there's lots of little changes in a really short period of time, it's your emotional center, if you like, cannot process it, because there's the mammalian part of the brain is trying to check what the rules are. So if lots of things are changing, your system cannot check that you're okay, that you're safe, that everything's okay, and therefore you can end up in emotional overwhelm, which is when you might find yourself being very teary, or you might find yourself being angry. Another form of struggling with change is frustration. Is often when change isn't happening fast enough, or there isn't any evidence or proof, or you don't feel like things are changing, like you're stuck in a rut and you're going around in the same circle and nothing is getting any better. And often that's because our attention has been going forward, and we've looked at what the problem was and what we're trying to get away from and what we're trying to work towards, but we haven't looked back and actually looked at what is working and trained our attention to notice the smallest amount of progress as we go through. And the third kind of struggle really is when we feel really stuck, and that is often because we have a decision that we need to make, and our subconscious mind, if not our conscious mind, is already weighing up all the overwhelm that might come, or past frustration when it didn't happen, and so we get stuck in indecision and we don't make a decision, and then we can't do anything, and so we just feel like we're kind of alone with this, and it doesn't matter who we talk to or what we do, nothing seems to be getting any better. So if you can relate to that, that's what we're going to be talking today about. I'm going to be sharing with you some of my strategies. Those of you who watch the videos normally, you'll see you have a change of background today, because I was starting to find myself, I think last Monday I told you that last Friday I was feeling a bit of a wobble. And for those that you know, I normally keep this background, I hope it doesn't make you dizzy, but normally your position so that blind is behind me. But what's been happening is that in order to get that blind exactly there, I have to push my chair right back, and I've got about 6 inches and I've got no real movement, no space to move. I was starting to feel like I was imprisoned. And the other thing is that, of course, my actual vision board and the stuff that I have for the book that I'm working on, in order for it to be working in the subconscious mind, I really needed to be looking at it front on. And so one of the things that we can struggle with change is that I know that for you, the viewer, generally speaking, what people say is that to keep the background as clear as possible, because it stops you from being distracted. And I know for me that if there's all this stuff in the background, I feel like I need to tidy up, I need to do things. So actually, if I just do this, I haven't got any tidying up to do because the background is nice and clear. But here's the problem that I've discovered. Because of that, what was happening is everything that was out of your view, everything of you as the viewers was a mess. And so I'd changed my perspective so that you got a nice clear background, but the view that I was getting was complete chaos. Now, it doesn't help that the flip chart is very carefully hiding the fact, I don't know if you can see it there, but basically they're in the corner of my room. No, I've got to go the other way with StreamYard. You'll see there's some plaster and some tiles, and we're in the middle of renovating the downstairs toilet and the shower room, which comes off of my workshop room. But we're going through all this change in that. So one of the challenges, that most difficult thing for change, is that when you have got to balance the change that you're going through And maybe when you're being how other people need you to be, so they're okay with change, it starts to not be okay with you. And then that's when the challenge comes in. If you're always prioritizing what other people need, so in my case, for the last 11-12 months, I've prioritized doing what's the right thing for you, keeping a clear screen at the back, but actually it was meaning I wasn't in the right space to work at my best. Now I could continue to do that. I could continue to have that nice clear screen. But what I would need to do is put more time in my diary so that I can maneuver the desk from here is when I'm online, and when I'm working on my own I can move the desk around. So I'd have to have a bit more time in my diary to move things around. So here's my strategies for if you're struggling for change. Your people that work with me a lot, you'll know what these are. First of all, number one, get clarity of what you want. Write down what you'd like to have happen. Then make sure that you say what you mean, and that you mean what you say, and you're not being mean when you say it. So what I mean is, are you saying what you want, or are you saying what you don't want? If you're talking about what you don't want, think about when you don't have that thing, then what happens, until you have a statement that focuses on an outcome, your desired outcome, what you'd like to have happen. Once you've got a statement of what you want to have happen, ask yourself what kind of, and is there anything else about those things? So let's say, so I want to be great at managing change. So when I want to be great at managing change, you might put what kind of I is that, and what would you hear and see when there's an I like that? When great, what kind of great is that, and what would be the evidence? What would you hear and see? And when change and managing, what kind of managing? So actually being really taking the time to be clear, what do you mean by what you say? And just making sure that there isn't any sort of contempt or criticism, maybe in your language or even in your tone. So sometimes people go, oh, I don't want to procrastinate anymore. And there's that kind of element that, you're putting yourself down. So one of the things I'd encourage you to do, which is what we talk about a lot on Manage Credit Monday, is manage that self-talk, the way you talk about yourself and to yourself that's criticizing yourself. Because if you are struggling with change and you're already holding yourself in contempt, your system is basically being told that you're not okay, things are not okay, and so your system's already on kind of uneven ground before any more change comes into place. And the more you can get clear, this is what I would like to have happen, and you talk about yourself, from a place of love and good intention, that you are absolutely fantastic right now, then the easier it is for your own system to manage and to take on change. So if you notice that you are in drama with yourself, if you're being criticized, maybe you're a victim or you're persecuting yourself, or maybe you're busy thinking, oh, I've got to do these things for other people, just notice and think about, when you've noticed it, what would you like to have happen? And just think about, if it was a good friend of yours or a young child and you were talking to them, how would you talk to them? How could you talk to that yourself with more compassion and more kindness, and talk about what you'd like to have happen? So let's stick with it. Let's assume that, I want to be great at managing change. Question number 2 is, how do you need to be? What kind of you is that is great at managing change? Or more to the point, what kind of you is that you that's good at learning new things? What kind of you is that you that's going to be okay at going, well, this is where I want to be, this is where I am, and I'm going to have to go through a process of changes in order to, so this is the irony, isn't it? I want to be great at managing change, and you're going to have to change to manage change. There's a brain fart for you. So how do you need to be? And in my experience of doing this for over years and years, is the more you understand the process, how do you do change? Change for you is like what? If you understand how you do change, so I know that I become conscious of my thoughts. I tend to be whinging and whining at myself. I then need to have some really honest and helpful conversations. It does spell the word change, by the way. Those honest and helpful conversations might be with myself, which I'm getting clarity of what I want, and I'm thinking about how I need to be. I have to be able to take time to actually accept and appreciate and acknowledge that I cannot change. So sometimes, there are some things in life that are really sad. bereavement, the loss, the absence of things that we really want, or we wish we were really good at something and we're just not skilled or talented to do those things. And so sometimes in the change process, I simply just have to take some time to grieve and accept what is, that there is nothing I can do to change it, that all I can do, all that's in my control, is to accept that it's happening. Then nurture the negative niggles. Now for me, those negative niggles are those kind of like all those unmade decisions, all the things I've been thinking about, I ought to, I should to, I need to. Now in my worst case scenario that I've ever done with this process, I had 7 flip charts down the hallway when I was working with my facilitator Leslie, and I was like, this is bothering me, this is bothering me, this is bothering me. So if you've got overwhelm going on, for me, one of my things, if I get into overwhelm, I have to stop and nurture the negative niggles. So I have to think about all the decisions I've got that are outstanding, and I flip chart them all, or I write them all out. It depends how many there are. Sometimes there's lots and lots. I find it easier to post-it note it and put it up so I can actually see it and I can step back from it. And then when I had 7 flip chart papers worth of stuff, it's because I hadn't been listened to and I hadn't taken time to listen to myself. I'd just been really, really busy going through lots of change. And there was all this stuff that had changed, there was stuff that was changing and stuff that needed to change, but none of it was really clear. I didn't have clarity of what I wanted to do with it. So one of the things that helps me with change is, if I'm getting into overwhelm, is to write everything out that is actually niggling me, and then go through them and go, given that, what would I like to have happen? And that will be the process. G for me in the change process is about growth, and it's realizing that most change is uncomfortable, but on the other side of uncomfortable, a bit like when you do a physical workout, it's uncomfortable at the time, but at the other side of it, you're stronger, you're fitter. And so often in the moment, if it's uncomfortable, I can just have some moment and think, be really grateful that if it's uncomfortable now, it's because it's unfamiliar, but the next time I do it, it will be the second time I've done it. And when I do it the third time, once I do it 3 times, it's going to be familiar, and therefore it won't be uncomfortable, and it will become the new normal. And therefore this discomfort that I'm getting is growth, and I'm going to grow from it. So knowing that I'm going to grow from it can actually help me to manage the discomfort that change often brings. And E is about embracing the change itself. Often a coping strategy is that we ignore that it's happening, we pretend it's not happening, we don't want to think about it, we don't want to talk about it. And for me, really recognizing change is happening, celebrating the change as it happens on a regular basis, which is something I do, which often means I don't get the negative niggles, and I'm more conscious of my thoughts, because I'm really noticing every change. So if I'm noticing I'm not as happy, or I am as happy, if there's anything changing, I'm just embracing the fact that change is happening. I'm noticing the seasons, noticing the change in my bottom line on my business, noting the change in the mood of my children, just embracing it and acknowledging and accepting what is. And the last thing is, if there's lots of changes, my strategy is I need to have support, because that brings me on to, you have to know what you'd like to have happen, clean setup process, how do you need to be, and then what kind of resource or support do you need. And in all the years that I've been doing this, what I've come to understand is that we often need to hear and see different things, and we can sometimes say that to ourselves, we can often talk kindly to ourselves, but sometimes we actually need another human being outside of us, and we might need someone that's going to be our cheerleader, someone that's going to remind us what's going well and help us see the progress if we're losing track of that progress. We might need a challenger, somebody who's going to ask questions and challenge us if we've kind of stayed in the status quo and we're not changing because it's comfortable just not to do anything. And sometimes we need a companion, somebody who's simply going to share the experience with us so that the change isn't as uncomfortable, just because you're not as alone with things. And ultimately, as the listening detective, I'm working with my clients to find out, as a coach, they want to get from here to here. So sometimes they just need me to listen so they can get clarity. Sometimes they need me to listen so they can get the process mapped out. And lastly, when they're going through the actual change, the impact of those decisions, they often will need me to change the kind of listening that I'm doing. So sometimes I'll be a cheerleader, sometimes I'm challenging them, and sometimes I'm simply somebody to share those experiences with. So the highs, the lows, and the in-between stuff of change. So thinking about yourself right now, if you're struggling with change, what do you actually want to have happen? How do you need to be? and what kind of resource and support might you need. And if you are going to do this very independently, which unfortunately too many people do try and do because they don't know who to talk to, is then do think about change for you is like what when it's working, what works about the way that you manage change at the moment, what doesn't work about it, and what could work better. And in all the years I've done it, there's about 80% of this work we can do on our own through journals, watching these videos, but ultimately we will need somebody outside of the system who can hear and see parts of us that we just lose sight of when we're going through change and we're busy. So I hope today's video has been useful to you, and you like the change of scenery, and I will see you on Friday in the group where we do Feedback Friday. So please tell me, are you struggling with change? If you are, what kind of change are you struggling with? Because the information you give me helps me know whether I need to change what videos I'm putting out, etc. So your feedback and your contributions really matter to me. Have a fantastic day, and I'll speak to you all soon.